This is the third and final part of my frame making series, so if you missed the other ones, go check those out. Well, I'm outside my yard right now because I am finishing off a frame. Well, I'm almost finishing it. This is one of the final steps, which is best done outdoors because I have to take this red primed frame that I've spent time sanding and getting ready, at least on one side. And I'm gonna spray paint it black. I usually do black frames nowadays. I used to do gold tone or gold leaf frames, and I've discovered over the years that that the trend has gone more black, and so I don't use anything particularly special. In fact, I used to use the super cheap, like 99-cent special spray paint at Home Depot, and I found that this stuff that says 2X really does work at least two times faster. So that's what I use now. So we'll get started. All right, I'd say the most important thing to do when spray painting outdoors, and this is for spray painting anything, not just frames, but is to take note of the direction of the wind. If there's any wind at all, you don't want the spray paint going in your face. So I'm gonna go upwind of it, and so I can actually tell that it's spraying a little bit more this way. So I'll move that a little bit. So it's gonna be in my shadow here. So what I do is try to get every single side, every ridge, everything that's facing me. You see how quickly this stuff goes on. Sometimes I underestimate how quickly this goes, and I have a tendency to overdo it, but it really doesn't take much. And then I turn it. See what I did? I sprayed it into the wind that way so that the wind helped me. Now I do the same thing this way. So nice light coats are usually better than thicker coats, because thick coats will run and drip. Those can be a pain to get rid of. Sometimes it just happens even if you're being careful, but I try to do it lighter than heavy. This used to take twice as long, at least, when I used cheaper spray paint, so definitely worth doing the stuff that comes out faster. Okay, so you get the idea. I'm almost done. One more coat, and then I just go over it, or go around it again and see if anything else needs any work. There we go. Just go around once more. All right, and that's it. So I'll leave that to dry for a few minutes. Maybe touch up a couple spots. I'll walk around, but I'll come back in a few minutes and grab it. And we're back. Okay, so the next step in this frame making process is, well, I find it easiest to use a plate. So the step is to squeeze out a little bit of this casing paint onto the plate, mix it with a little bit of water, and then paint it on the frame. And this particular casing paint is by Richardson. The Shiva series comes in these little tubes. I used to get multiple colors, and I would mix up a beautiful, like, full spectrum brownish gray, and then I found out that, look, that already exists. So I just buy bulk of raw umber. You don't have to buy bulk, and just buy one. It doesn't save you any money to buy bulk usually. At least if you get it from Blick.com or or jerrysartorama.com. I really like both of those. I'm sure there are other places to get it, but I always recommend getting it online rather than from a local art store. And I hate to say that, but you're going to save a lot of money by getting it online. As much as I love to support local businesses, it's in your best interest to buy it online. It's a lot cheaper. All right, and I just add a bit of water. Now I want it to be pretty wet because it really isn't a big deal. I'm gonna mix all that in there. I mean, it's useless as a paint. It's just soupy, but it works great as an antiquing, what would you even call this layer? But it's not soaking into anything. It's actually staying on the top. So I try to get the whole frame covered. And you can see I got just about the right amount. Sometimes you get a little too much and you waste some of that paint, and other times you get not quite enough. That's all right. It's not very expensive. It's mostly water. Okay, now I need to go around the outside edges. So that's important too. So again, my first step with this casing is to just get the whole frame covered. And I'm going to do the other two sides off camera. All right, so now I've got 100% of the black surface covered. Now let me just make sure real quick to make sure that I've at least hit the inner edge there. Okay, so I've got the whole thing covered. You can see it's already sort of pooling up in the little edges, little crevices on the flat surfaces, and of course down in the divots of the deep grooves. And that's essentially what we're going for. And there's really not a lot you have to do. So if you get it too wet, it's not a big deal. All you have to do is just let it dry longer. If you get it too thick, that's not as ideal. You actually have to like do this kind of textural thing on it. You know, if I do this like that, I'd have to be consistent all around the whole thing. And as is, you know, when it's nice and wet like this, it kind of finds its own level. Let me just make that consistent again with the rest of it. So I will just wait. Probably for my dry climate, it'll probably only take 20 minutes. So I'll be back in just a sec. Well, I ended up having to wait overnight for this to dry completely, and it's dried a little bit more splotchy than it sometimes does, but that's not a problem at all. Now the next thing I do is I use 000 fine steel wool and this stuff called Rottenstone. Kind of a secret that was hard to come by. If you don't have this and you're in a hurry or you don't want to get it, not a big deal. You could use, I don't know, something like plaster powder would probably work fine. Of course, that's white instead of gray, so that might not quite give you the look you're going for, but that's okay. The Rottenstone is literally for polishing, but it also stays in the cracks a little bit and gives it some color. So I'm gonna open that up real quick, and all I do is, obviously this one has been used before. Usually it's fluffier looking than this, but I'll just dip it in. It doesn't actually take a lot, but what I'll usually do is kind of just put a little bit in the corners just to kind of distribute it. It's not really important how much to do, and I'll lightly spread it around, especially the flat part. And then I'll lightly distribute it around this part. And by this point, it's pretty much used up. Like what I mean is there's not a lot left on here. So then I'll start working it in. And I'm working it in while I'm also working the casing paint off. The part that's really gonna show up the most is this this flat part. So that's the part I want to be a little bit careful about. So I'm not pushing very hard, but I'm also not afraid of scratching most of that gray casing off. I guess it's burnt umber, isn't it? But it looks gray once it's dry. It's kind of brownish gray. So I just go around doing this. And once I've gone around the whole thing, you can see that it goes from matte to shiny again, where I've steel wooled it. And actually it's shinier now than it was even before I painted it. As you remember, I used an ultra flat black, so it was definitely not shiny before, but rubbing it does make it shiny. But I hope you can see what this whole process is doing, as it's making the little indentations and valleys be more and more full of dust or dust color, and more matte, and then the parts that are getting rubbed are more shiny. So now that I've done the flat part, I'll do the same thing to the raised parts, and you can see how quickly that goes from matte to shiny. And quite shiny. I mean, it's kind of insane. And I'll just go ahead and show you. I'll usually go around the whole thing before I start to focus on one corner. But I'm just going to rub it lightly, a little bit at a time, until I just start to see that red show through. That red is pretty thick. That stuff that I put on, that I made, it's pretty thick, so I can actually rub it pretty hard and not worry about like getting down to the wood. But that's not what I'm going for. I'm just going for a little bit of red showing through. And I do the same thing over here. And I mean, supposedly what this is mimicking is like 500 years of being carefully moved around and touched and subjected to just time. So you don't want anything, I don't know, it depends. I guess I should say for this particular one, I don't want it to be too rough. I just want it to look like the other one, which is a light antiquing. So I'll just go around the whole thing doing this for a minute. I'll show you another corner, but then I'll just do the rest off camera. But you can see how fast it is. This part does not take a lot of time. So just where I can see a little bit of red. Now with this particular molding, this is great for Western or Southwest designs. It's good for anything really, but it's great for that. And when I do a Western landscape, or I haven't done a lot of horses and cowboys, but if I were to do that, I'd probably choose this molding, because what I can do is use a little bit of epoxy putty, which is also what I do to fill big gaps and soften corners a lot of times. But I'll actually put a little piece in there, right there, and right there. And then as it's drying, I'll kind of shape it carefully so that it looks like this was a solid piece and someone has come along and carved out a nice little piece there and a piece there. And I can do the same thing in the corner or close to the corner. kind of this this dotted line pattern, but it makes it look more like it was hand carved for this particular size of frame. And you can do all kinds of things with that epoxy putty. Usually I'll go along the grain, the direction of the actual piece of wood, but sometimes it's easier in a particular spot to go this way, go across it. Okay, let me off camera finish the rest of this. Okay, look how shiny that is. There's actually a little bit more red showing through than I would have liked. I went a little bit too gung-ho on it, but that's all right. Now I'm just gonna try to get most of that dust off. So I hit every surface at least a little bit, including the outside edges, and just gave it a little bit more where I wanted it. So let's see if we can polish it up more. Now at this point, it is gallery ready, but I think I can do better. In fact, that was just a teaser. I always do one more step, which is to wax it. All right, this is Gamblin's brand of cold wax medium. And it's a little dirty because I've used it a bunch for this purpose. Now, if it's clean, you can actually use this for varnishing paintings. And it gives it a nice, soft, well, waxy finish. It can be buffed to a nice shine, so it'll be like this. Or you can leave it matte. But it protects paintings. So if I want to do that, which I do sometimes, and I have dedicated an old clean brush to just that. Anyway, it's essentially just wax. So all I do for the framing though is dip it in, and I follow the same process as before. I kind of distribute it first. Same process as what I did with this stuff. The rotten stone dust. Just distribute it first. Just so I'm not putting a bunch on one place and then accidentally overloading it there and not getting it somewhere else. So once I get it everywhere, then I just distribute it. And once it's on there, you can kind of tell it definitely gets more slippery. And it actually dries pretty quickly too. I don't know if you can tell, probably can't see it very well, but now in a way, I'm kind of trying to avoid pushing it into the corners here, or into the, not the corners, but the valleys and edges where I want the gray to remain. So I'm not intentionally trying to push it in there, but I'm also not avoiding it. Like, it doesn't matter if it gets in there a little bit. Because once it dries, it does keep those parts a little darker, but it's not really noticeable. So you don't have to be too precise, and it's okay to be kind of hit and miss on those parts. And on this deep part, I don't bother at all trying to get it in. But if I do accidentally get some in there, I'll go through with a mostly dry rag with maybe just a little bit of residual wax on it and just sort of distribute it so it's not super noticeable that I just hit one spot. So I'll get this on every single surface, including the outside again. And then, by the time I've gotten to the end of this whole process, it's getting dry enough What I mean by that is that the solvent in the wax is dried enough that I can basically just buff it, just like polishing a shoe. I'll use a completely dry rag. This is the one that I used to clean the dust off, but I'll go ahead and use it. It's just fine. Let's see. Pardon me, I still have a cold. So if I sniff a little bit. So let's see the difference here. I think this part's dry. So it's kind of shiny. And then as I lightly buff it, I'm not pushing very hard at all. Look at the difference. This part's a little bit wet still, but you can see as I buff it. There we go. Wow. And that is absolutely done. So I'll just go around doing that to the whole rest of the frame, and it'll be finished. Okay, and there's the finished frame, and finally I can get this piece of foam out of my studio. Because I'm done. So, okay, that painting is going in this frame. So I'm going to turn it over, and that's correct, I'm not putting this on a soft surface, but I'm going to be careful with it. And grab the painting. This one's already varnished, but I'll just double check. Okay, good. And I'll stick it in. It scared me for a second. I thought it didn't fit. Just didn't have it in there. Okay. I didn't actually test this when I had gotten it past the first little step. I just kind of assumed that it fit. But usually I think it's a good idea to, before you do all the finishing, make sure that it's actually gonna fit the painting. And in my case, you know, whatever, if it didn't fit, usually I could just save it for another painting and cut this board or stretch a canvas to exactly match. One of the reasons I do cut boards is so that I can do custom sizes anytime I want. Having said that, I usually just do standard sizes, 24 by 18 being one of those. But yeah, but it does give me that option. Also, they're pretty dang durable, so that's one of my reasons why I use that. Okay, I can't really do this one-handed at all, so I'm not gonna probably do it on camera, but all I do is, to get this in there, is take these little, so I just got these little wire nails. They're just 1 inch. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what size you use, but I find that 1 inch works for any size of painting. And I'll hold it, I'll push this down with part of my hand while I hold this there, generally at a slight downward angle. So my daughter's gonna hold this for me while I do it. Okay, just show how I do the nails. Oops. And see, I'm not being extremely careful because I didn't set this down on something soft. I probably should have done it on there, but I do this all the time, and I've never had it scrape up the floor or my paint or my frame. Or if it did, I guess it would just be more rustic.
And cool looking.
Yeah, when it comes to framing, oftentimes those little scratches and scrapes make it better. I usually use a smaller hammer than this, but this works because this is the one I could find first. I think 3 on each side is enough. Oops, forgot these ones. And then all I have to do is put the hanging hardware on here. I use little D-clips there and there, and then I put the wire on. Okay. Okay, well, that is it. Time for the reveal. Wow, I've never seen this one framed before. It looks really nice.
Yeah, me neither.
Also has a nice waxy feel to it. I like the wax.
Yeah.
It makes a sound when you rub it. So the only thing I might do to this frame after this point is to seal the back. And I need to do that to the back of the painting too. So what I've done is I bought an inexpensive like fence sprayer, and I put shellac in it. And shellac is a alcohol-based natural sealer, wood sealer, and I'll spray the whole thing, frame and painting included, with that, and it takes only 5 or 10 minutes to dry. So I'll do that. And since this is going from a dry climate to back east, you know, I'm in the west, it's going back east where it's a lot more humid. I think it's a good idea to seal both the back of the frame and the painting. But just seal it up, put the framing or the hanging hardware on the back, the little clips and the wire, and that's it. Then I'll stick it in my box with the other painting, well, that one there, with the other painting that I've got in there. Put a bunch of foam around them and between them, and then get off to the gallery today. So hopefully within the next hour, so that it can be on its way and hopefully sell soon. All right, well, okay, so I'm off outside to spray this, to get it ready. I'll do that, but next video will be about this painting. I'll talk, can't see it, but you know what I'm talking about. I'll talk more about that and take you through the whole process of that. All right, thanks for joining me. Hope you learned some valuable things about framing, and therefore you're gonna save tons and tons of money. And yeah, I'll talk to you very soon. Okay, bye. Finally, get a clean floor.